Hello everybody, I'm Yang Yang. Welcome to Tea House, China Radio International's online video talk show. You can watch our program online at www.crienglish.com and also enjoy Tea House via iPad. To do this, press CRI Video and then press the teapot button down here. So you can find our program here. Well, today we'll have a cup of tea with Frank Levin, chairman of Export Now, a company that helps U.S. firms to sell products in China.
Frank Lavin is the chairman and CEO of Export Now, a company that helps foreign companies succeed in China by selling products via Tmall, the country's largest B2C platform. Lavin has spent much of his professional life working on China-related issues and international business. He also serves as regional chairman of Edelman Public Affairs, working with companies across Asia as they grapple with regulatory challenges and sensitive government relation issues. Lavin served as Undersecretary for International Trade at the U.S. Department of Commerce from 2005 to 2007. In that capacity, he was the lead trade negotiator for both China and India and a senior policy official in the department responsible for commercial policy, export promotion, and global trade negotiations. Lavin was U.S. Ambassador to Singapore in 2001 to 2005, where his duties included helping negotiate the landmark U.S.-Singapore Free Trade Agreement. Lavin's writings have been published in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, Foreign Affairs, Foreign Policy, and other periodicals. He's the co-author of Export Now, 2011, published by John Wiley & Sons. He was editor of Rising to the Challenge, 2010, the official book of the USA Pavilion at last year's World Expo in Shanghai. He also served as chairman of the steering committee of the Shanghai 2010 World Expo USA Pavilion.
Frank Levin will talk about how to succeed in China's e-market 10 years after China's entry to WTO. Hi Frank, welcome to our program.
Thanks Yang Yang, thank you for having me.
Glad to meet you again.
Good to see you.
And I prepared some Chinese tea for you.
Yeah, this is lovely, thank you so much.
Please have a try. You know, this year marks the 70th anniversary of China Radio International. What would you say to CRI?
Well, 恭喜你们, 恭喜. 70th anniversary, that's very good, that's very impressive. I think this is part of China's voice to the world. I think China has an important story, an important message, and I think the more countries are able to share and communicate cross-border, the more understanding we have. So I hope all countries are able to communicate cross-border and share their message.
You know, this year marks the 10th anniversary of China's entry to WTO. What has changed in the international trade market during the past 10 years?
Well, I think we've seen a few changes in the last 10 years. First of all, China's entry itself was a huge step for China and I think for the world. I think it showed that China is able now to compete with and to work with other countries on an equal footing. So this was a very important step for China. Also, some of the requirements or some of the conditions of China's membership took place over several years. So even though it's the 10th anniversary, it actually took several years for the adjustment to be made. So that's one change. I think the second change is China over these 10 years has had 10 years of very strong economic growth. So it's not just that China is more open and more international than 10 years ago, but China's economy is also significantly larger than 10 years ago. So China plays a much more important international trade role than 10 years ago.
How did these changes shape the business environment in China and all over the world?
I think I have quite a bit of change in China and also for the U.S. and other countries. Within China, what we've seen in these last 10 years is the emergence of a very strong middle class, consuming middle class with strong purchasing power, some orientation toward international brands, sophistication in buying habits and so forth. So Chinese consumers have come a long way in 10 years. I think that's also been impact in the rest of the world because now the rest of the world also has access to Chinese products. So we see a lot of industrial goods and consumer goods in the United States have some Chinese components or raw material in China or final production in China as well. So China is now very much a part of the global supply chain, global production chain.
And what do you think are the new strategies the companies should set to tackle the challenges?
I'd say this. The Chinese market now is the wealthiest it's ever been, and it's the most open it's ever been. So the opportunities for U.S. companies in China now are significantly greater than 10 years ago. 10 years ago, China was a much smaller economy and much more of a developing economy. So some of American products weren't really suitable or wouldn't fit necessarily well into China of 10 years ago. But there's a much better fit today. If you ask Chinese consumers what they want, well, personal electronics, fashion, cosmetics, food, the same thing American consumers want, right? So it's an easier fit for U.S. companies now.
I know that you used to be the Undersecretary of the U.S. Department of Commerce and the U.S. Ambassador to Singapore, and now you're an entrepreneur and the chairman of Export Now. Your professional path is quite interesting. Why did you start the company Export Now?
I saw this opportunity. I spent a lot of time in government working with Chinese trade negotiators, and we worked over many years to reduce trade barriers, both in the U.S. and in China, and we'd say both countries have much more open trading systems now than 10 years ago. However, the soft barriers are still very important. By soft barriers, I mean language difficulties, familiarity with the market, not understanding the currency, local regulations. All of these soft barriers can be quite difficult for the smaller business in particular. So my view is there's an opportunity to help the small business work with Tmall in China and help small businesses sell their product directly through Tmall to the Chinese consumer.
Is your company the first of this kind in America?
Yes, it is. It is. Again, remember, think about this, Yang. 5 years ago, we couldn't do this. 5 years ago, there were not enough customers on Taobao or Tmall to make this worthwhile. So only now that China's economy has developed so quickly, there are so many e-commerce customers in China, we say, now there's an opportunity to do this. So this has not been done before.
How many members are there in your company? In America, in China?
We're just starting out. We have about 5 people in the US and about 5 people in Shanghai. So about 10 people total to start.
How did you choose your partner?
Tmall?
Yeah, and how do you cooperate with each other?
I've always been impressed with Tmall and Taobao. I think it's very entrepreneurial, very serious about working with partners, about collaborating. They run an open platform, meaning they only make money if the participating companies make money, right? So of course they want to work and help with all of the stores that are on Tmall. So we're very happy to work with them, a very professional company.
What are your short-term and long-term goals of your Export Now company?
What we want to do in the short term is just have a successful launch. I think if we have 20 or so companies signed up by the end of the year, we're very happy. If we're starting to sell into China, we show that our system works. That's a great short-term goal. Longer term, our goal is to have the American department store on Tmall, so that we are the natural home for American products. So for Chinese customers who want a special product or looking for something a little distinctive, a little special, they have a website to go to on Tmall that features these American products.
Why do you think the e-commerce is a solution for the problem of a soft barrier?
Well, because one of the most important soft barriers is what we call customer identification. You go to a new market, but how do you find your customer? How do you meet your customer? This can take a lot of time and a lot of money. And small businesses don't have a lot of money. But the good news is e-commerce makes this very easy. You can get in front of hundreds of millions of customers instantly with no extra money. So if your product is special, if your product is distinctive, the customer will find you. So it's an enormous help to the small manufacturer who doesn't have a marketing budget, can't afford to hire many people, doesn't have a sales team. These small business people have many, many limitations, but e-commerce is a good friend.
Okay, thank you. It's tea time. Let's have a cup of tea, and then we will talk about challenges and opportunities of e-commerce in China. Welcome back, Frank. That you know that China has a large amount of customers here and developing very fast. But you also know that the cost is lower than any other places around the world. How do you believe that the customers in China would like to buy products from the U.S.?
Well, first I have to say that not every Chinese customer will want to buy. It's entirely their decision. It's an open market. If they like the product, they buy it. If they don't like it, they don't buy it. So I'd say actually the responsibility is for the U.S. manufacturer to make sure that the U.S. manufacturer produces a product that the Chinese customer will like. But in general, I'm optimistic because Chinese customers are increasingly sophisticated and affluent and internationally oriented. They want the best. So if they think in this case maybe the American product is best, then please buy the American product. If they prefer the French product, then they will buy the French product. If they like a local product, they buy the local product. So it's open competition.
What kind of products do you think that can become popular in China?
Well, what I would tell the U.S. manufacturers is try not to compete on price, because as you point out, China is actually a low-cost producer. So you have to compete on some other basis. Some distinctive attribute of your product, some special attribute or luxury or premium or some clever element of your product that no one can find anyplace else. You have to find something like that. Now, it's an open platform. It could be fashion, it could be baby and child care, it could be personal electronics, it could even be food and wine. But any of these products, I think you can find very high quality products made in the United States that the Chinese consumer likes.
You know, it's very hard to find a very successful foreign e-commerce companies here in China. And what do you think are the challenges for them?
I think there are a number of challenges. One is every society has different consumer taste. So I think a manufacturer has to understand local taste, local preferences. So you have to be patient and be thoughtful about how you introduce. That's one. Two, it can take a while. It can take several years to develop your distribution, to develop your brand, to understand the market. So you might have very slow growth for 2 or 3 years before you start to grow. But look, there are some very strong brands in China that from U.S. manufacturers. I can think of General Motors cars, or Levi's jeans, or Boeing airplanes. I mean, I think there's a lot of respect for these brands. Pepsi, Starbucks, these are all very strong brands in China.
And how to solve the problem?
I think step by step. I think the number one thing I would say is you must have a high quality product. Consumers over the long run will respect the product, respect the quality. If you don't have quality, it doesn't matter how you market, how you advertise, the consumers will not respect you.
What are the opportunities for the U.S. manufacturers here in China, in your opinion?
Well, what we're trying to do is set as low a price and low a degree of difficulty as possible to get as many manufacturers in the market as possible. It's an open platform, meaning everybody can try. Whether they will ultimately be successful depends on the value of their product and the view of the Chinese consumer. So we cannot promise to American manufacturers, we cannot promise success. But what we can promise is this is the easiest, the simplest, the least expensive mechanism to reach the Chinese consumers. So this is the best way to try the market, to test the market. Here's the central point. I think in many Americans' minds, China is one of the most difficult markets in the world because they have limited familiarity with China. They've never been to China. They think the language is very complicated. So they're a little intimidated. China looks very difficult. What this company does, Export Now, is it changes that entire opinion to say now selling in China through Tmall is as easy in the US as selling on eBay or Amazon shops. And now is no longer, you think of it as the most difficult country in the world. Now it's actually the most easy country to sell to in the world. You can do it from your desk. You can do it from your office. You can just sign up and register. You ship us a pallet, and within a few weeks you are in a sale on Tmall. So it changes, I think, the image or perception of China in the mind of these American businesses. Once they start selling and have success, they say, this is incredible. I've never been to China. I don't know anybody in China. I'm still selling in China. Well, because of e-commerce, right? So now the world is more open. People can connect more easily, and you've now found some new friends in China.
Okay, thank you very much. It's tea time.
Okay.
After another cup of tea, we will talk about how to succeed in China's e-market.
Super.
Okay, welcome back, Mr. Lavin. What are the key factors that can help the U.S. companies to become successful in China's e-market?
Well, here's a point, Yang, that I think most Americans don't know. E-commerce is actually much more developed in China than in the U.S. Remember, in the U.S. Has an older commercial system, so the commercial sector was mature before e-commerce developed. Chinese commercial sector is more recent. It developed at the same time as e-commerce. So most Chinese manufacturers and retailers developed e-commerce very rapidly. For example, Taobao sold last year about 10 times the amount of merchandise than eBay US did. So 10 times as large. So e-commerce purchasing is, I think, a much more normal activity, a regular activity for the Chinese consumer than it is the U.S. It's much more developed, a much more mature field. So my view is U.S. manufacturers need to look at this opportunity. This is the most efficient way. Remember, China is not just a country, it's a continent. So if you only look at traditional channels, it can take you years and years and years to develop stores in each city. What e-commerce does is it gives you immediately a national reach, national footprint. So we tell our friends in America, this is the most efficient way to start national distribution. If you only use traditional channels, it can take quite a long time.
And compared to their Chinese competitors, and what are the special capabilities of the U.S. companies should have to become successful in China's new market?
It is. I would say this to the American manufacturers. Don't compete on price because China is already a low-cost producer. You have to compete some other mechanism. Secondly, you have to sell a product that, remember, there are cultural differences and languages differences. So you have to sell a product that does not require instructions, does not require assembly, that works as soon as you receive it, you are happy to get the product. Don't sell a product that requires some kind of assembly or activity because the customer can just be unhappy. So I would make those kind of points.
I know that you started a website called exportnow.com.
Correct.
How can this website help the U.S. manufacturers?
Well, this means any U.S. company can now sell onto China's Tmall site from the U.S. in English language. So in the U.S., you can sell on Tmall by using English language, pay and receive in U.S. dollars, speak to Americans for customer assistance, and we take care of everything else. And then on the Chinese side, the Chinese customer buys through the Tmall store, and they speak in Chinese or use Ali Wang Wang, Ali QQ for CRM. They pay with Alipay or some other renminbi instrument, and it's shipped locally. It's already in Shanghai. So for the Chinese customer, it's a local purchase. For the U.S. manufacturer, it's a local sale, but actually we take it cross-border.
How many companies have registered in your website?
We are just launching in October, so we just go live in October. So I'm going back to the United States next week to formally start this program. We think by the end of this year we will have over 20 companies signed up.
What industry of the companies? Do you have restrictions?
No. It's open platform. No, we don't have restrictions. Of course, every company has to have two very important points. You have to respect U.S. law, you have to respect Chinese law, of course. But we have no restrictions. If it's a legal product, we are very happy to help you sell it.
How can you build trust during the process?
I'll tell you, I have a lot of respect for the Tmall Taobao system. Here's the point. Anybody who buys from Tmall has the right to return. There's a guarantee policy. If you don't like the product, you're unhappy, you can return it. Within 7 days, you get all of your money back. So that's a very important point for the Chinese consumer. The Chinese consumer is fully protected. Then the parent company, Taobao, does not release the money to us until after 7 days. So if the Chinese customer is unhappy or wants to return it, they get their money back. So that's a very strong statement of trust.
Let's consider if a company registered on your website and they want to sell products to Chinese customers, and what is the process of it?
Well, they register and then they have to ship us products first before we post. They ship us products to our depot. We have a depot in Los Angeles, Long Beach, and then we take it to Shanghai. We have a warehouse in Shanghai, and as soon as it gets to Shanghai through customs brokerage, we post it on Tmall. We have a photograph, we translate, we label, we post it. And then we have an IT system so that the data all goes back to the U.S. customer. Every day the customer sees how many did you sell, what is your revenue, what is your profits, et cetera, and they get the money back from the sales. So all they have to do to sign up in the U.S. is to pay a registration fee and to ship us 1 cubic meter, 1 pallet of goods, and we post it for them on Tmall.
And what is the profit-making mode of your Export Now company?
Well, we receive a percentage of the total sales. So we are paid by the U.S. supplier a percentage of the sales. And by the way, that's Tmall takes a percentage. Tmall makes some percentage too. We take some percentage too. Of course, the government gets VAT. They get their percentage too. So everybody gets a little percentage, and the U.S. supplier is happy.
How much percentage?
We're charging 10%.
For Export Now?
Correct.
And how about for Tmall?
Tmall, it varies. It depends on the product, but it's usually around 5% for Tmall.
What about the government?
The government's VAT is 17%. Well, the governments charge what they charge.
What is the most challenging you have ever made since you started this company?
I think our main challenge now is marketing in the U.S. because many U.S. companies do not fully understand this point. And we have to spend a fair amount of time. We have to talk with them about how this works, how Tmall works, how the currency works, how the export. I mean, it's a reasonably complicated.
I know that you wrote a book called Export Now. How long does it take to write that?
Well, writing the book took about 6 or 8 months, but we probably did about 6 months of research before writing. So the writing itself, I wrote with my friend, my co-author, Peter Cohen. The writing itself wasn't bad, but you had to prepare for about 6 months of study and analysis and planning. Then we could write.
And what kind of information do you want to convey through your book?
This was just a general study about why do some companies succeed in exporting and why do some companies fail, and what are the keys to exporting. If you are a company, and any company, Chinese company, American company, any company, what are the key lessons, the key rules to be successful in exporting? And so we studied about 2,000 companies, successful and unsuccessful, and tried to understand what makes a successful exporter, and then we wrote it so that the business person can read this.
I know that Ambassador Gary Locke wrote the foreword for your book.
That's correct.
And he said that it's hard to enter a new market anywhere in the world. And if I were a manufacturer in the US company, and how will you persuade me to invest in China?
The question isn't whether you should or should not go to China. I don't think that's the right way to look at it. I think the right question is something like this, Yang Yang, if I may say. What is your international strategy? You have to think beyond your home market. If you only think of your home market, watch out, because in the US, for example, the domestic economy is not growing very rapidly right now. So you can miss opportunities. So you need to think about some kind of international strategy. Now, which market first is the question. And I would say, yes, you should definitely think about China. But first, think about building international capabilities, maybe starting with Canada or start with Mexico. Build international capabilities. As you develop those capabilities, you can go to China or other markets as well.
And what do you think of Jack Ma?
Jack Ma, I'll tell you this, Americans respect success, and Americans respect creativity. And Jack Ma has been very successful and very creative. He has done a lot, I think, to find openings in the market and bring in some new ideas, and then he helps the consumers, he helps the manufacturers, he helps everybody who participates. So I have a lot of respect for Jack Ma.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much for joining our program. I hope you enjoy the tea.
It was lovely tea. 谢谢你请我来.
What are your hopes to my Tea House program?
I think this is very impressive. You know what? There are so many attributes of China about which Americans just aren't familiar. Chinese history, Chinese culture. There are interesting things happening in China every day. And I think your program just helps bring some of this alive for the American viewers or international viewers. So it's terrific you're doing this. Thank you for your work.